So keep on going with your silly dream by Peter on AO3. This fanfic may include suicidal thoughts. That is your warning. Podfic by Lily6645. Chapter 2. Quirkless Nerd versus the World. Isuku stared blankly at his ceiling, remembering yesterday's events over and over again. Kachan had been attacked by a villain and almost killed. If it hadn't been for a hero, Isuku couldn't even remember the hero's name. What was going on with him? He would be dead. Kachan, Katsuki Bakugo, his invincible, bull-headed best friend, would have died, and he could do nothing. He knew that. Isuku couldn't be a hero, couldn't save anyone. So why did he mind keep flashing to the previous night? He shut his eyes, thinking of the adrenaline, the scream, the odd walk back home. Most of all, though, he remembered the look in Shinso's eyes. That obviously pissed yet resigned look. Like he knew no hero would save him. And he was right. It wasn't a hero that saved him. It was Isuku. The quirkless nerd saved Shinso. Against all odds. If it weren't for the new contact he'd put in his phone, he'd have thought he dreamt the whole thing up. Despite himself, Isuku felt a small smile creep onto his face through the tears. He had saved someone. Without a quirk. So how the hell did someone else get to tell him that he could and couldn't be what he could and couldn't be? He was sick of it. Maybe he could never be a pro hero, but that didn't mean he couldn't save people. And so, for the first time that day, Isuku forced himself out of the comfort of his bed. He scrambled to the computer with the renewed vigor he thought he'd lost on the roof. He'd prove All Might wrong. He'd prove them all wrong. Isuku was born to save others. Not himself, never himself. Isuku was never meant to be saved. That was a fact. That was the end of Chapter 2, Quirkless Nerd versus the World, of So Keep On Going With Your Silly Dream on AO3 by Peter. Thank you for listening. If you liked this podfic, please support the writer of the fic on AO3. On to the next chapter. Chapter 3. Research, Research, Research. Vigilantes are to be sentenced a minimum of 10 years if they are apprehended. After the vigilante known as Combust turned to the dark side, heroes cracked down on vigilantes. Vigilantes, public menace? The article of Vigilantism, a purely hypothetical step-by-step guide. Thank God for vigilantes. If one hadn't saved my ass, I'd be dead in the sewer around now. Heroes are what we see, sure, but vigilantes and underground heroes, they're the real good guys. How to do how to defend yourself in an attack, endurance training, strength exercises, how you can gain abs overnight. No clickbait. If you reading things and thinking about it, don't. Vigilantism is highly elite. Izuku scrubbed at his eyes, groaning at the sheer amount of sensory torture he'd been putting himself through. Hey, he'd learned a lot, though. He rapidly wrote down, everything he could find on vigilantes, pretty much. Most people were against vigilantes, preferring the legal way of doing things. Vigilantes were considered extremely dangerous after one close to the heroes had went rogue. Hence, the minimum prison time being 10 years. Outrageous. That was more than most home intruders got. However, the most interesting thing he'd found? Vigilantism, law enforcement undertaken using one's quirks without legal authority by a person/group of people. Right there, in the definition itself, was the biggest loophole Isuku had ever laid eyes on. To be considered and prosecuted for being a vigilante, he'd have to have a quirk. And so, for the first time in his life, Izuku realized being quirkless could be a good thing. Izuku swallowed, hand shaking as he stared at the exercise plan he'd made himself. He was really thinking about doing this, wasn't he? He could see the headlines now. Quirkless middle schooler lost his life trying to be a hero. He slipped on a pair of black sweatpants and red hoodie, only a few shades darker than Hawk's wings. He laced up his battered shoes, then slipped his phone, wallet, and house keys into his pocket. Thankfully, his mom was at work until late, so he'd get back in plenty of time without worrying her. If not, he'd just text. He needed some fresh air.